Hey, Barb, thanks for taking out the time today to chat with us.
No problem.
Well, before we get into, the depths of the conversation, just to kind of know a little bit about you and your background, can you
Mhm.
fill us in and the listeners in on who you are?
I'm Barb Getty. I live in the Indianapolis area, and I've lived here for about 40 years. Um, I currently have my own real estate brokerage, and I own a bunch of rental properties here. And that's pretty much what I do with, work wise. I have a blog also. So yeah, I enjoy helping just regular people purchase and sell homes, but also investors from all over. So um, I have a few people from California who are real interested in Indy.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's just pretty stable here. When everywhere else in the country dives, we just kind of dip, and our rental values are going up like crazy. I think we've had a 14% increase this year, and the inventory is low, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Multiple bidding wars, the whole nine yards. So
Yeah.
hoping that'll maybe even out a little bit with the interest rates going up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, were you investing first in your career or were you an agent first? So, tell me a little bit about that.
Um, real estate investing was never part of my plan. I
Okay.
mean, I was a stay-at-home mom. Um, my husband was with Eli Lilly. We moved around a lot. They moved their people a lot. And by the time we moved to the Indianapolis area in 1980, that was our seventh house in 9 years of marriage.
Okay.
And we had three kids along the way during all of it. And so I was fortunate. I was able to stay home with them.
Yeah.
So, but then fast forward to 1992 when my son was 17 and his sisters were 16 and 14. My son Todd was killed in a car accident,
Oh my gosh.
and it was really devastating for all of us. My girls adored their big brother. They shared a lot of the same friends, and so we just tried to get through it. And about 8 months after Todd was killed, the marriage fell apart. So that was another crushing blow for myself and my girls. I had to find somewhere that I could afford to live here in our little suburb of Zionsville, which is fairly high end. And so, I mean, the only thing I had to keep my girls in their school. The only thing I could find was a little 3-2 ranch that was kind of wasn't good, but it had good bones.
Yeah.
And so I bought that with monies that I had gotten out of the divorce, from the family home, and I had to fix it up. Um, my 16-year-old, when she saw it, she goes, "Oh my God, you mean we have to live here?" And I go, "Yeah, we're going to live here and it's going to be fine."
Yeah.
No, I was not sure about any of that. So I fixed it up. It looked great. I still live in this little house, and my friends started saying, "Barb, you should flip houses. You've got the eye. You've got some skills." And then I had a close friend who was a CPA who said, "Barb, flipping houses, no. You need income. You have no income."
Yeah.
So she said, "Why don't you buy a dump and fix it up and see if you have the wherewithal to be a landlord?" So I had no credit. That was really stupid. But back then, a lot of women who were married and stay-at-home moms didn't have credit cards and bank accounts in their names. So I could not get a loan. So I had to scrape together monies out of the money that I got from my divorce, and I bought this duplex for about $19,000,
Okay.
and it was a dump. But I spent about 8,000. My girls helped me, hired a couple of other people to help me, and I fixed it up, rented it out, kept it for a year, a little over a year, about 15 months. And I thought, okay, well, now what? You know,
Yeah.
I didn't have any more money to cash to buy a house. And so I thought maybe I'll see if I can sell this one. So I sold it for, gosh, about 2.5 times what I bought it
Mm.
for in 3 days. So I
Yeah.
took the cash and I bought two more. And so I just kept doing that, um, kept trying to build my credit. And when I was finally able to build my credit, I put mortgages on the the rentals that I had. I had 3 at the time. So I pulled the money out, bought another one. I just kept going like that.
Yeah.
And eventually I was able to get a home equity line on my own home.
Mm-hmm.
I bought for cash out of there. And so I ended up having 29 rental units. And then I had started helping other people manage their homes. I had written a book. A guy from California, Sebastopol, called me. He flew out here. He wanted me to help him buy rentals here.
Yeah.
So I started helping him buy rentals. Then I started managing for other, higher end properties for other people.
Yeah.
And then he asked me if I'd get my realtor license so I could be his one person show. And I thought, oh, that's really the last thing I want to do. But I did
Yeah.
it. And so, so I've helped him buy probably 5 or 6 homes here and just kind of kept it going. So I've had my realtor license for probably 10 or 11 years.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So real quick, just to kind of recap a couple of things. A lot of people, for one, get into real estate investing out of necessity to get out of their job. And some
mhm,
people do it to, future forecast for their retirement.
mhm.
What was your motivation?
My motivation was income.
Okay.
I needed income. I had graduated from Purdue, but I hadn't worked in forever. And
Hmm.
I needed income and I needed it to start coming in pretty quick.
Yeah.
That was mine. I just never knew that I would go that direction, but it worked for me. I had a lot of stumbles and mistakes along the way, but in the end of the day, it was a good venue for me.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Mhm.
Um, what were some pitfalls? Especially, it sounded like, did you flip and then when you did buy a property, sometimes hold it? Is that what I heard correctly on that?
Well, I mostly kept what I bought and
Okay.
rented it out, fixed it up and rented it out.
Okay.
I did do a couple of flips, and I've
Okay.
helped other people do flips, but my main goal was to have a steady, stream of income, um, build my portfolio, increase my net worth, and have enough money to be comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, you going through the challenges that you had over, the course of your life leading up to this, was
mhm.
there anybody that was a mentor or someone that kind of helped you along the process, or were you doing this all on your own?
Well, when I decided to start doing this, I read every book I could get my hands on rentals and how to do it and how to manage them. And I networked with people. I joined our local landlord association, um, met people through that. But I realized once I got into it, I mean, the books don't tell you everything. And since I was an English and French major at Purdue, I thought, you know what, I can write a book
Yeah.
and just tell the truth. And because I went through a lot, my personality is I choose to believe the best in people and the
Hmm.
best in situations.
Yeah.
And that as a landlord was not helpful.
Yeah.
I allowed people to stay way too long, and I finally just had to say, Barb, you're going to go under if you don't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was the major pitfall that I had was my personality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see. Yeah, I mean, I could see
Mhm,
how um, there's a lot of people that get caught in that
mhm,
scenario
mhm.
where
Yeah.
they're too nice or they're renting out to a
Mhm,
couple of friends that they know,
mhm.
you
Yes.
know, and,
Mhm.
and they get put in
Yeah.
that situation.
Right. Some of my tenants were pretty low income people. Their lives weren't stable. And I wanted to help them, by providing a nice place for them to live.
Hmm.
But then, when their car breaks down, they can't pay the rent.
Yeah.
And so they'd promise it 2 weeks from now, and then 2 weeks comes, 2 weeks goes. You know the drill. A lot of
Yeah.
people have had this, and I think, the property management side, the landlording side of the business ends up being what drives a lot of people out
Hmm.
because they
Yeah.
just can't, they just can't deal with it. And I had a friend of mine ask me one time, so Barb, what is it, personality wise, what does it take to be able to do the job that you do? And I thought about, I mean, no one had ever asked me that. And I thought about it and I thought, okay, it's two things. You have to be very organized.
Hmm.
And you've got to be fairly laid back because, a lot of stuff goes wrong.
Yeah.
Not perfect.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for
he
sure.
said, well, those two qualities don't appear very often in the same person. I said,
Well,
oh,
that's true.
yeah. But, I'm pretty organized and I'm pretty laid back. So those two things work for me.
I think you and I are the same on that sense. You get, I know you can't be type A and type B at the same time. At least that's what a
Right.
professor told me when I was in college. So
Uh-huh.
I think that there's a couple of traits that can be within that type A type of person,
Hmm.
and you instill that. So um,
And you
for
probably do too. You probably compartmentalize pretty well, right?
yeah, 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 I would say so.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. So, what were some, the first 5 years, let's say, of investing and buying those properties? What would you say that were like the 3 to 5 biggest um, takeaways from it that you learned and you say, I'll never, do this again, and it changed your
Mhm.
business as you went forward?
Um, I didn't do super thorough background checks.
Okay.
That was one thing. Most of my properties were on the lower income to middle income level, and that was difficult. Researching the tenants. Some of them had already had an eviction or two on their records, and that was a problem. And then the other thing, being too trusting, that I learned a ton from that and changed my ways. I mean, that was really important for my business, and to just keep improving them as I had the money. You know, put in new flooring, put in tile bathrooms, and as I had the money along the way, I started doing that, and that helped things go so much smoother.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so, what would you say if I was to, start buying rentals today? What's a couple of things outside of, the background check and increasing that value add of the property, like you just mentioned, putting in tile flooring and those types of things. What are a couple other things to newbies you would say?
I would go ahead and tell them to try to join their local real estate association if there's one of those. There usually are,
Yeah.
um, because there are a wealth of information there, a lot of different types of investors and contractors, and you can learn a lot by just talking to people. Um, I did go to a couple seminars that were pretty helpful. Um, they were just local here. Um, and I would tell them to keep records, really
Oh,
good records. Save your texts. When there's something going on, you save that text thread
yeah.
because down the road, if somebody comes back on you, you can say, well, hold on. Your text of September 16th said,
Yeah.
so really just cover your tracks, have a good liability policy. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have my rentals in an LLC.
Okay.
I'm a sole proprietor.
Okay.
And in these 27 or so years that I've been doing this, I've never been threatened with a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So I've got a writer, and it
Okay.
costs me I mean, it's 2 million. It cost me maybe $260 a year. Totally
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah.
So,
What about, so talking about asset liability protection? What would you say would be the best? It sounds like you've been fairly, for one, lucky, obviously, with no lawsuit, and I
mhm,
think that honestly goes to show kind of your personality and then how you've run your rentals. But at the same
mhm.
time, um, is there some perks to keep it like that for tax purposes? I know you're not a CPA, but um, is there some perks, do you know of?
Well, Peter, as you know, I mean, there are so many great tax breaks
Yeah.
that you receive as a as a rental owner.
Yeah.
And it's huge. And it has
Hmm.
helped me tremendously through the years. Um, I don't see, I know people, I know friends of mine who have 10 houses and they've got each one in a different LLC.
Hmm.
And I just look at that and I go, oh my God, I just don't want to keep up with all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Mm. And so, I mean, really, the only pitfall of that is if you would be sued. Although I started early on not sharing with my tenants that I'm the owner, and I
Mm,
still do that today.
yeah.
And that puts a little bit of a wall of protection between me and them, so that I'm more the go-between. The I've had people ask me, "So are you the owner?" I go, "Well, I'm the property manager,"
Yeah.
and I leave it at that. Um, Now, if they're real motivated, they could dig and find that I'm the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't do that. They know that I'm a good landlord, and you know, they know I'll treat them fairly.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Um, so that's a good point, especially, it's nice because then you're the property manager and you don't really have
mhm,
as much ties, to that
mhm.
tenant and the property. Um,
Yes.
do you are most your single families, or are some of them, duplexes, and do you have any, bigger properties like five and above?
I don't have any that are 5 and above. Um, I've got a fourplex and a couple triplexes, some duplexes, single families. I mean, I have a whole mix
Okay.
of rentals, and they've all been good. I mean, you make more money from a duplex, of course,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just a good mix of real estate for me.
What was there some issues the longer you had those rentals to get financing and stuff like that? And if so, like for instance, you had 10 or more.
Hmm.
I know that's a lot of people's walls where they're like, "Well, I have 10
Hmm.
properties, I can't get another loan." How
Right.
did you combat that when you got into that, if you did get into that situation?
I never got into that because I worked hard to build my credit, and I only had 3 mortgages on my
Okay.
properties.
Yeah.
And so I had those 3 mortgages. I had pulled the money out. I bought more property. And then when I put the home equity line on my own house, I could buy for cash out of that.
Yeah.
And so I never ran into that where I had like, 9, 10, I'm at 10 loans, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I never ran into that. And
Got it.
my goal always was to own everything free and clear, and I
Hmm.
and I do now.
Yeah.
Um, so that has been good for me.
Yeah. 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 No, I
Mhm,
agree. Um,
mhm,
Why do you think that there's a lot of people out there that don't own rental properties, or real estate? They tend to stay away from it. And do you think that that is a disservice that some people have had over their lives? Some people say, like for instance, what we were talking about earlier, that landlording traits. Some people don't run it like a business and stuff like that.
mhm.
What have you seen over the years of people why they don't buy properties, and why you think that they ultimately don't get into real estate?
I think the main reason is that they've heard too many horror stories.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
I think that's what stops people. That it's scared. People are afraid. I mean, I've had so many people say to me, I'm worried that they're going to totally trash the house and vandalize." Well, I've never had any of that done.
yeah,
But the people tend to hear the horror stories.
yeah,
And I think that's the main thing that, bars their entry into buying rentals. It's just their own fear and, think, "Oh, I don't want to go there."
yeah. I think a lot of those people that hear those other stories are hearing it
Mhm,
from someone that only had one property. They didn't treat it
mhm,
like a business. They didn't
yes.
screen
Mhm,
the tenant, and
yep,
they didn't have
mhm,
any like reserves. So like when
right,
something did come up, all of a sudden they're like, "Well, yeah, I just had to sell it because they want a new roof, and I didn't have the
yeah,
money for it."
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's an issue with their preparation, of course,
Hmm.
you know, but, yeah, I think that's the main barrier, though, that why people don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you know what? What a wonderful way to diversify your wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The market's going to go up and down and up and down, but the property values, you just kind of keep creeping up and creeping up. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like especially, the time that you have with those properties over the years is just like,
mhm,
just like investing in a 401k. However, when that market goes down, your equity
mhm,
in that stock goes down, right? And
yep,
then as with a property, even though the equity goes down, the cash
mhm,
flow stays the same,
yep,
or goes
mhm,
up, you know?
yeah, exactly. And back in 2008, I think our values maybe went down maybe 30%,
Okay.
25, 30, but then they popped back up,
Yeah.
you know. So that's just not something that I worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Um,
Mhm.
What what do you think your best property was or is, that you've invested in, and why was that? Why do you think that that was like the best property to have?
Hmm. Well, I think probably my fourplex is the best one because of the return I'm getting on that investment. It's crazy. And the house is not metered separately for utilities, but
Hmm.
I just build that into the rent. And I mean, I every time it goes empty, which isn't often, I mean, I have people lining up. They want it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's, the I call it the cash cow.
Yeah.
A lot of years, I mean, my return is like 20%, 25%.
On that fourplex.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for the single families too. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a few, I think 3 or 4 single families, and they're nice homes for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, not much repairs needed. Going forward if you do it right the first time.
Yeah.
Well,
What would you say, especially like single family versus small multifamily, like the duplex, triplex, and fourplex? What do you think the pros and cons are on each?
well, of course, like for instance, in my fourplex, okay, there's four units in there. They're all under one roof.
Yeah.
Noise complaints, fighting, music too loud, um, having a bunch of people over. So those, I think that's, when you get into those the bigger ones, it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I would say so. Yeah.
yeah. And I have that sometimes in my duplex, it's not very much, but the more units you have in one building, the more there's going to be the possibility for little dissension going on there.
Yeah. Um, since, managing those properties, how many units do you own so far?
At the top, I had 29,
Okay.
and I've sold a few of them along the way. So I probably have 18, 20 units.
Okay.
But my
Uh,
real estate brokerage continues to grow. So, I finally stopped the property management because I had those 29 units. I had 15 really nice homes that I managed. And then I was doing my 29,
yeah,
one person. And
that's
I'm
a lot.
fine being a one person show. And I thought, okay, something's got to give. So I gave up the property management. But between the balance of those two things, I'm busy and I like everything I do. I'm old. I mean, I'm 73. And I mean, my friends are going, Barb, you need to, you're in the fourth quarter of the game. You need to stop and start enjoying. I go, what if I love what I do?
Yeah,
I
that's true.
mean, I love what I do and I'm good at it. And, why would I quit that?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, there's always, been a struggle between people that, want to live their life until they're, X amount of years old and then start working to get to that
Mhm,
retirement age. And then some people
mhm,
work really hard, at a pace that they want to throughout their whole
mhm,
life. And those
mhm.
people I feel like that I've met are so full of life and so,
Yeah.
um, live a lot longer because they're doing something
Mhm.
that they love, they're passionate about,
Right.
and it's not like you
Mhm,
you wake up to do this. You don't wake
mhm.
up, to have
Right.
to do something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's huge.
Yes. And there are very few times that you stress about what's ahead in your day.
Hmm.
because you're in control of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And
No.
it's a nice way to live and work.
Yeah. I agree.
Mhm, mhm. And
Um.
through all of COVID, I mean, I did not lose one tenant.
Oh,
And
really?
I just raised rents on 6 of them because, you know, being too nice, just kinda letting it be, and I thought, "Well, I may lose 3 or 4." Well, I didn't lose anybody.
Yeah.
So, if you treat your people fairly and with respect and take care of your places physically with repairs, then it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, it is. I mean, I've seen, two ends of the spectrum. So I'm at one end where it's like I'm just gonna fix the things that are proper to fix, right? In
mhm,
the sense of
mhm.
like the garbage disposal goes out, I'll go get it fixed.
Yep,
If the AC needs, a service or something like that, it's not
mhm,
running as cold, I'll get it fixed
mhm,
because ultimately at the end of, you owning that, say you
mhm,
want to sell it in 10 years,
mhm,
or if you want to hold it for 30 years, the lifespan of that property is going to go a lot
mhm,
further and you're going to get a
mhm.
lot more money when you sell it. Um,
Yes. Mhm,
versus you have the other spectrum where those people are, they're charging less, and I'm on the other end. I'm charging more for rent, market
mhm,
rent, and I'm
mhm,
but I'm doing the fixes versus someone that's not charging as market rent
mhm.
and they're not doing any of the fixes and they say I'll just charge less and have my tenants do it, which I've
Yeah.
seen a lot worse situations
Oh,
come out from that, right?
that's a nightmare.
Yeah. So they're not hiring, tradesmen to do the work.
Yeah.
They're delaying the work because they don't want to pay
Mhm,
for it,
mhm,
which ultimately puts your property in more
mhm.
disrepair,
Yep.
and all those other things. Have you seen that same type of thing?
Well, I mean, there are slumlords in every city,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I bought most of my places from people like that, who they had neglected him. They hadn't taken care of him because I didn't have the money to spend a lot more.
hmm,
So, yeah, I mean, that is everywhere, but I cashed in on that because I made money going in when I bought those properties.
yeah, yeah,
And I got them at a fairly low price because they were in disrepair.
yeah,
And as long as the bones were good, I went with it. If it didn't have major foundation issues, it was going to be 20 grand to fix. You know, I just took it on.
How did you find those properties? Did you find them from just talking to people on the street,
Um,
or
well, early on, I used a realtor
okay,
that I had met, and she helped me buy several of them. And then I just got more connections with people. And I
hmm,
would hear, I have connections with wholesalers here, of course.
yeah,
I'd get properties from some of them. So, yeah. And then, of course, after I got my realtor license, I looked online a lot and found things that way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Um, when you're negotiating these, even through a realtor and stuff like that, what are some key points to give to the audience on what to either negotiate or how to offer on those properties, especially if they're, like you said, you bought a lot from landlords that really didn't take care of their
Hmm.
properties.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, well, the negotiation comes in when, I mean, that person knows the roof is kind of shot.
Hmm.
Um, there's water in the basement. There's mold in the attic and mold in the basement. And then I mean, I just kind of tried to work them down in price because of those items.
Yeah,
Because though I mean, that stuff is make what they call major defects.
yeah,
And then if the seller's not willing to fix those or take less money, they're not going to be able to sell the house.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, So I was going to ask you earlier, and we got sidetracked talking about some other good stuff. But coming from owning properties for the last 30 years, what does it look like for you now with managing them on a technology basis versus what you used to do? Is there some other things that you've implemented, and what were those?
Okay. For a while, I used Rent-A-Meter,
Okay. Yeah.
and I quit that because it just wasn't suitable
Yeah.
for what I do.
Yeah.
Um, and the tenants were confused about it. It was not worth it for me. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I still, well, I put all of my rentals on Zillow now,
Okay.
so that the applicant pays for the credit check, credit and
Mm-hmm.
background, which is great for me. So that was a good thing that I did. I still keep my rent sheet on a paper 13 column sheet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean that I know that's really old fashioned, but it kind of works for me and it's easy for me so that I do it that way. I mean, I
Yeah.
do, yeah, I've enjoyed the Zillow app, and I've got are you familiar with the app Mile IQ?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that app
Yeah.
because I mean, it was really hard for me to keep tracking my work miles versus my personal. So I use
Mm-hmm.
that quite a bit. And I use Rent-A-Meter
Mm-hmm.
to help my clients, if they want money to buy a rental, what can I get in rent? So I pay for that. I pay for I think it's, I don't know, $100 a year maybe, so that I can get more detailed information.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived here for 40 years, so I know pretty much every neighborhood in this entire city and the surrounding counties.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have to go somewhere to look at a house and I don't know exactly where it is or so I downloaded Waze,
Oh, yeah.
which is so excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, that has helped me tremendously. So I love those apps.
Was when you were, starting out to buy, and you said you read a ton of books, pretty much every book. What were a couple of key books that helped you, get to, buying a few of the rentals to, up to
Um,
29?
well, I read the Big Yellow Landlording for Dummies. I
Okay.
did read that. Um, and I think maybe I read Real Estate Investing for Dummies, and then I joined that group. Um,
Yeah.
I also got, I mean, I got contact with a guy that I bought a duplex from him. He was part of this, older guys group. There were like 10 or 11 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Boy, you'd really benefit from being in this group." And I said, "Well, that'd be awesome." He goes, "Well, let me ask them if they're okay with having a woman come."
Oh,
I
really?
went, "Oh, okay." But they let me come, and there were a couple of older guys there that they just mentored me for years and years.
Yeah. No,
And
that's huge.
they'd been around the block. They had done a bunch of different investing stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah. That's huge.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so, getting into, was that the local landlording association? Was that what you're talking about, or something
Mhm.
else? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
And
And
they
that
just,
was helpful.
I'm sorry.
That was helpful.
Yeah. What did they kind of teach you? Was it, or like, at least what'd you get out of it? Was it some stuff to, some tangible stuff on a daily and monthly basis that you can utilize for your rentals?
Well, I joined a landlording subgroup,
Okay.
and I learned some good tips through that. Um, and they always had speakers they talked about different aspects of the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
evictions and buying and selling and exit strategies and all that stuff. So I kind of got a good broad picture
Yeah.
that way.
What, for you, when you're buying those rentals and you're using lease agreements, what type of lease agreements were you using? The ones that you were getting from your real estate agent you were working with, or were you using different ones that you had drafted from an attorney or yourself?
I made my own,
Okay. All right.
and I ran it by, and it was, I mean, way back when, it was like one page.
Okay.
And I ran it by my real estate attorney, and he
Yeah.
said, "Oh my God, I think you've covered everything in here." I said, "Okay." So I used that for years, but then I made it a little more detailed. But now, I mean, even so, I mean, I took I look at the leases that they have on the realtor websites. It's like 10 pages, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've looked through all those and I just broke those down, took out all of the legal schmiegel, stuff out of it, but kept the guts of it.
Yeah.
And the lease is only 3 pages, but
Okay.
I also ran that by my attorney. He said, perfect,
Yeah.
you're totally fine.
That's
So I
awesome.
mean, I like to keep things simple.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit down with a person to read through a 6 or 10 page lease, I mean, their eyes
Yeah.
start glassing over after the second page, and
Oh, for sure.
yeah, so that has worked for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've done all my own evictions.
Okay.
I don't
Ha-
hire those out.
Have you evicted a lot of people or no?
Early on, by the time I'd been in the business 15 years, I bet I had evicted hundreds of people.
Oh, really?
But in the past, I mean, I very seldom do an eviction now. And it's
Okay.
because I've gotten smarter and smarter.
Yeah. You've gotten better and
I've
better.
learned by all the mistakes. But
Yeah.
also I've improved my properties to the point where I'm getting a pretty nice demographic of tenants
Yeah.
who they take care of the place and they make sure that they get their rent paid. And so, I mean, I can't remember the last time I did an eviction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is the process pretty short there where you're at?
Oh, it's very easy.
Okay.
You you file the eviction. Your court date is 2 weeks after that,
Oh, that's nice.
and the tenant either shows up or doesn't. And the judge asks them, "Are you behind in your rent?" And that's a yes or no. And then the judge says to me, "Do you want possession?" I said, "Yes, please." So the judge orders them out 5 days later.
Oh, really? Do you have
Hmm.
to show up with sheriff or they order them
No,
out?
in all these years, however many years I've been doing this, the sheriff only had to come one time.
Oh, really?
And
Huh.
I try to help my tenants get out. If they're on the brink of being evicted, I tell them, and some of the cases, it's just rough. People
Yeah.
go through rough times. And I'll tell them, if you can be out by, you know, a week next weekend, I won't file the eviction on you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they will do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
because they don't want an eviction on their record.
yeah.
So I try to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're fairly nice. I've heard, completely other stories. So, um at least you've had you've had some luck with that. Once it comes to eviction, at least you can,
Mhm.
smooth them over with just, hey, move out next week and we're good to go.
Well, yeah, and sometimes I'll even tell them that, okay, I'm going to have to file the eviction because they didn't get out.
hmm
Then they've got 2 weeks again, right?
Yeah.
So I tell them, if you can be out before your court date and leave the place clean and empty, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes I'll even give them $200 to help them with their next deposit,
Yeah.
because the quicker that I can get them out, quicker I can get that place turned and rent it again, you
That's
know.
true. How
Hmm.
how have you been able to hold tenants accountable? Like, for instance, paying rent on time and everything like that.
Hmm.
What are those the guidelines or the things that you set in place up front so they're going to be a good tenant paying that, telling you
Hmm.
how they need a repair and stuff like that?
Hmm. My tenants are good about contacting me if they need a repair.
Okay.
And I'm really, really attentive to that stuff. I get somebody, if I can't fix it, I get one of my people to go and get it done for them quickly.
Yeah.
And the rent, I mean, my lease is really, really very specific. If rent is more than 5 days late, you pay a 10% late fee. And if you're not totally caught up by the 10th, then eviction's filed.
hmm
And that's just, they know that going in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that has not been an issue at all.
No, that's huge.
Hmm.
Are you still currently looking for places to buy, or have you kind of slowed
You
down?
know, I'm I'm done buying.
Okay.
My role right now is to help other people
Okay.
through the process, and take care of my own rentals. I mean, I can sell one if I want a year, but I probably am not going to do that. I don't really want to take any more on right now with my
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
But I have a handyman who, I mean, he actually rents from me. He's got a
Oh, really?
master key to all my places. I can travel. I travel a fair amount.
Yeah.
and I can do my work from anywhere because if there's anything that goes wrong, you know,
Just
Craig
call
will
him.
fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have
Um,
a lot of freedom. I have a lot of freedom in my work right now, and so there's no reason that I would change any of it right at least right now.
yeah. How
Mhm.
were you able to find like the handyman you have now and then the vendors that you use to fix your rentals? How were you able to find those and be successful at finding?
Um, yeah, networking a lot.
Okay.
Well, I've had some major fails
Yeah.
on that early on, but my handyman, I was up on one of my roofs of one of my duplexes. I was painting some trim boards, and he was across the alley. He had a little storage garage there,
Hmm.
and he mentioned to me, I do repairs. He goes, you shouldn't be up on that roof. I go, it's fine. So he wrote down that he didn't have business cards.
Oh yeah.
He wrote down, and so I was using two other guys at the time, and their prices started going up. So I thought, I'm going to give this guy a call. I saved his, and so I called him, and he was honest as the day is long. He
Hmm.
grew up in the neighborhood where I have a lot of my rentals, which is
Yeah.
so weird. And so I bought a triplex that was one street over from his mom, who still lived there.
Yeah.
And so it was a garage apartment, and the front was a duplex. So he still lives in that garage back there.
Really?
Yeah. And he takes care of stuff for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 And really, I mean, just networking with other people, I have been able to find some decent contractors. But
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people that want to invest here, it's like, you know, make sure you vet your contractor.
For sure.
Because you know how many horror stories there are on that,
Oh,
right?
that's I think that those go hand in hand with bad tenants, bad
Yep.
contractors,
Hmm.
bad tenants, for
Yep.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
It's a problem.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had to find a contractor. I called 60 of them and narrowed it down to 4 of them.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, and then we pulled one out of the hat out of 60 phone calls. So I called 60 of them, my wife and I, and then this was for a remodel because we didn't really know we hadn't flipped in that area, and
Uh-huh.
we basically narrowed it all the way down. People didn't call us back. People didn't work in that area, but they worked 30 minutes away.
Mhm.
You name it, and
Yeah.
then narrowed it down to 4 of them that would call me back and say yeah, and then narrowed it down to one. So
Mhm.
yeah, you definitely got to
It's a
vet.
process, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you
Mhm.
gotta, I mean, you got to put in the work to be able to put out a good
Mhm.
product, or fix your properties and have someone
Yeah.
reliable, right?
Yeah.
So
And
that's
that, I mean,
huge.
that's a huge thing,
Hmm.
you
Yes,
know.
yeah,
And
that
I mean that a lot of the good contractors are always busy. It's the bad ones that aren't busy.
yes,
So
I
that
agree.
could be a red flag when someone says, "Oh yeah, I can be there tomorrow."
Yeah, exactly. Like if they
Yeah.
could be there tomorrow, I would I would either say they're going to be way too expensive,
Uh-huh.
or because they have a ton of crews going on,
Yep.
or they got nothing going on. So I
Yep.
got to see that. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I mean,
uh,
between that and the property management, I mean, I have self-managed all these years, but boy, the property management also can drive people out.
yes,
Having bad property managers. There are
yeah,
so many bad ones. And
yes,
when I stopped doing it, I mean, my owners were like devastated. And so I did some homework and networked and tried to find some good. And I do have the names now of some decent ones, but man, there are a lot of bad ones.
oh yeah,
They don't repair stuff. They don't answer your calls.
yeah.
I mean,
They say they're going to be there on Thursday, and they don't show up
yeah,
till
right,
2 weeks later.
right.
Yeah,
And then in the meantime, the tenant has taken off work on Thursday because they're coming.
yeah, yeah. You name it, right?
Yeah,
So
it's bad.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, Well, Barb, there's a couple more questions. I think you answered some of the ones that I asked right at the end. However, um, I usually ask what an app or tool that you use that's helped your business, and you've
Hmm.
named a lot of them.
Hmm.
Zillow.com you use, MileIQ,
Hmm.
Rentometer, Waze,
Hmm.
and then I think that was the big ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then what about You'd mentioned a couple books, Landlording for Dummies. Is there any other books that you've read that really, helped you get on the map with buying rentals?
Well, about 6 years in, I wrote my own book.
Okay. What was that?
It's I brought a copy of it here. It's called The Landlord Chronicles. Here's the cover. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so that was the cover has a before and after of one of the total dumps that I bought in
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And the reason I wrote the book is because I read all the books. I read them all, and they didn't tell you everything. And I thought, I'm a good writer. I can write a book. I'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
So and I mean, you don't make money by writing a book, but I felt compelled to do that because I wish I had had a book like that when I started.
Yeah.
Something that told the truth. I mean, I've got some major horror stories in there that
Yeah.
that I that I
Yeah.
experienced in the beginning when I was just so naive and
Yeah.
oh, but you know what? It's a good like A to Z. It starts with um, finding the neighborhood.
Hmm.
You know, deciding what kind of houses you want to buy. Where do you want
Yeah.
to be? I mean, for
Yeah.
me, my big parameter was I didn't want to be more than 30 minutes from my house because I knew
Mm.
I was going to be working on it and
Yeah.
managing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wrote my own book and I put it out there, and that's how one or two of my California people found me because they had read that book.
Oh, nice. That's
So
cool.
yeah, and I also write a blog by the
Okay.
same name, the
Okay.
landlordchronicles.com. And I put good tips in there, different tools, techniques, managing styles, just a help thing for people
Yeah.
who just want to get into it, maybe learn more about it. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good way for people. I mean, that stuff wasn't out there when I started,
No. Yeah. Yeah.
but that's a good way for people to find a good blog or a good website that is pretty detailed, right? I
For
mean,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it can help people learn more and be more prepared
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
not prepared enough.
Yeah.
I was not.
I think a lot of us are not prepared for,
Yeah,
even you could, like you said earlier in the episode, you can read all that you can read,
yeah,
and there's still a lot of things that are left off the table.
yeah. The real life stuff comes
Yeah.
along and it's like, well, holy crap, I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like,
Exactly.
oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
No,
lot of those
exactly.
oh no moments.
Yeah, I know. Um, well,
Mhm.
Barb, I know you mentioned Landlording Chronicles is a blog too.
Uh-huh.
Where can people find out more about you?
I would tell them to go to the landlordchronicles.com,
Okay.
and there's a little tab on there that says a bit about Barb. Um, and they can find out more about me personally
Mm-hmm.
on that. But that's also the site where I just put a bunch of different, you know, advice things and just from my personal experience.
Yeah.
And I think there's a contact tab in there. People could email me if they want. I mean, I do enjoy helping other people
Yeah.
navigate this whole, adventure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. For
quite an adventure, yeah.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
How long have you been doing this? You're so
So
young.
thanks. So I bought my first rental back in 2013 in
Okay,
California.
okay.
And I bought a couple more after that.
Mhm.
And I got my real estate license thinking I was gonna, save all this money on buying property and everything else. And
Uh-huh.
I started to build my real estate, uh, basically my real estate team.
Yes.
And I didn't really get serious until it was like 2017, and then I started really selling a lot and actually marketing and building it as a business versus just
Mhm.
like, because when I got my license, I was like, yeah, people are just going to come to me. They're going to know that I have my license. They're
Yeah.
going to come and want to buy from me. And
Mhm.
I've quickly found out that's not the case. And
Uh-huh.
you really got to put in time and effort. It's
Yeah.
just like any business.
Mhm.
So 2017, I got serious about it and then started started to do more sales and then buy more properties. So yeah.
Okay.
And then everything that I own is in California.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, talking about cash flow and stuff like that, I really, that's one, gold mine, is to make sure that cash flow's consistent. I know the coastal cities and states are really good with appreciation, but I don't count on that. I count on, cash flow. And then
Isn't it
California.
hard to get a good percent return because of what you have to buy the property for?
I look at more, well, not back in 2013, 2014. It was a little bit easier just because the
Okay.
market was just coming back from,
Yeah.
that downturn.
Mhm.
And then, I held off for a couple years for my stupidity, just because I kept hearing people said, like, hey, there's a crash coming, there's a crash coming, there's a crash coming. And that's one thing I've said on my other podcasts is, don't listen to that. Don't listen to, like, I mean, granted, do your calculations, do your due diligence.
Mhm.
Don't just randomly buy something.
Right.
Um, but someone asked me the other day, and they were like, "Hey, I'm going to buy my primary residence. Do you think there's a crash coming? Because I keep hearing about this, which we are pretty high, right? So
Mhm.
that is something to keep in mind. However, I've been hearing that there's a crash coming since 2015. So,
Oh,
and I'm
well, I have 2.
yeah, and you've probably gone through, multiple cycles where it's like,
I
hey, there's
have.
a crash coming, there's a crash
Mhm.
coming. And
Mhm.
like as soon as we get to the bottom,
Mhm.
that, like, let's say, the bottom was December 31st of 2021,
Mhm.
the first of 2022, hey, there's a crash coming. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
there's always
Yeah.
going to be the doomsdayer.
Yes.
I always look for, now with the market being so good, I look for value adds. So
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
back in 2017, California changed a lot of different laws for adding mother-in-law's quarters, or granny
Mhm.
flats, as you would call it.
Yeah.
Also known as an ADU, accessory
Mhm.
dwelling unit.
Okay.
Um, so you can basically build a second unit on the property. Um, it takes a while to get approved, but
Yeah.
the cities came in and said, and like after 2017, they basically said, okay, well, we're going to take all these, laws, and we're going to put our own laws in there. Well, back in 2020, the state came back in and said, okay, we're going to take, because they really minimized what you could do. And the state came back in, California, and said, okay, we're going to take those out, and we're going to allow these people to, not be as, uh, you know, crippled by all the laws that the local
Yeah.
local governments put in.
Mhm.
So we bought one in 2020. We just got approved for an ADU, and we're gonna build a second unit. But that
That's
front unit,
awesome.
yeah, it's really good. So that front unit gets about 2650 on rent, and then the back
Mhm.
unit, once it's built, will get about 2000 extra of rent.
Wow.
Uh,
So you're almost doubling.
yeah, yeah.
That
So
that's
almost.
pretty cool.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I look at more like value add stuff, just
Yeah.
because, like you said, it's how do you even
Mhm.
get like a return on your investment, especially in a high
Yeah.
appreciated area. You got to look at
Right.
value add for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, and we also, that property in particular, we got permits, so it was big enough for a 3-bed 2-bath, and it was originally a 2-bed 1-bath. So, or sorry, it was originally 2-bed 1-bath, and we changed it to a 3-bed 1-bath.
Okay.
So we permitted the dining room as a second bedroom,
Mhm.
and we went through the permit process. Took a little while, but then we were able to get an extra like $400 of rent, just because we got that
Mhm.
extra bedroom. So we
Yeah.
did that too.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
huge.
Yeah, so I try to do that, just if I'm staying in a high, for anybody that's staying in a high value market, you got
Mhm.
to look for those little holes where you can get into, and
Mhm.
capitalize on those.
Yep. Yep. I mean, that's great for the present, but also for the future.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and then, there's a couple of people, especially in California, where it's like it's tough to get the exact valuation for an ADU, but they're so, back in 2020 they changed it, so you used to not be able to do those ADUs on a rental property. Now you can do them on a rental
Oh,
property. So
that's
uh,
nice.
yeah, so it's nice.
Mhm.
and it's tough to get the evaluation proper on an ADU, but there's so many more that are coming out in the market
Mhm.
that you really have the appraisal valuation now because there's a lot more
Yeah.
properties that do have them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a great way to get around the prices.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It is. It
Mhm.
is. I always talk to people about that. Just try to find that
Mhm.
value add, do ADUs,
Yep.
do everything
Mhm.
you can that's smart, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to do a second unit and feel like you're all over somebody else. Like,
Right.
you're not building this
Mhm.
close to the other
Mhm.
person's property. You give them some, you buy a bigger
Yeah.
lot or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's a great way to do that.
yeah. So that's what I
Mhm.
look for. Um
Mhm.
Well, Barb, this has been a pleasure to speak with you and go over, how you were able to build, your wealth and ultimately your cash
Mhm.
flow, especially over the
Mhm.
years, especially with someone that, didn't start out as a real estate agent. You started
Yeah.
buying rental properties and
Yeah.
you got into it with really, not a lot of backing of it. So it was
I
cool to
know.
hear that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
it can be done. I just, people need to know that it can be done.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. It can
Yeah.
be done, and
Mhm.
honestly, you know, the investors. I don't talk to a ton of investors, like yourself, where it's a more humble beginning, and then also, they're putting those pillars into place across the years of their life to
Mhm.
retire whenever they want. And like you said, you travel a lot.
Mhm.
I don't talk to enough people like that, where it's like, I did this methodically to be able
Mhm.
to later down the road or right from the get have income, but later down the road
Mhm.
also have consistent income.
Yep. Yep. I
So
mean, I love what I do, and I'm living well, living happy,
yeah,
and still working, and I just don't see myself quitting,
yeah,
you know?
no, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Like I said earlier, that's I mean the people like that are the people that they live a very full and happy life. Like they consistently do
Mhm.
what they love doing, and
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
ultimately love getting up to do that specific thing.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's huge.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well,
Well, I
Barb,
appreciate you having me.
yeah, of course. It's been a pleasure. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay.
All
Thanks
right.
so much, Peter.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.